Welcome to From the VC's Bookshelf, a podcast from TBR, the College System of Tennessee, the state's largest higher education system. In this series, we examine how we might re-envision the work we do and how we work together as we move into a post-pandemic world. Please join our host, Dr. Heidi Lemming, Vice Chancellor for Student Success, as she leads a live discussion with industry experts and leaders throughout our system.
In our Spring 2025 podcast series, we are focusing on themes found in the book Creating Campus Community in Search of Ernest Boyer's Legacy by William McDonald and Associates. The book was released in 2002, but we feel the relevance of the topic is more important than ever for our students and institutions. Belonging asks, does everyone on campus feel valued, connected, and able to be their authentic self? In many ways, belonging is the emotional counterpart to inclusion. It's the feeling of having personal involvement in an environment. A sense of belonging is centered on gaining acceptance, being part of something, and feeling supported, as well as giving support to others. So like inclusion, a sense of belonging is active and requires reflection. Thriving institutions create spaces to foster social connections and communication that in turn nurture creativity, innovation, and success. So in today's podcast, I'm excited to be talking to two panelists, both from Columbia State Community College. The first is a student. Reagan Phillips is the president of the Student Government Association and the Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society at Columbia State Community College. He's in his final semester and will soon earn an Associate of Science degree with plans to transfer to a school out of state. Outside of school, he has run a few small businesses and has experience in procurement and sourcing. As SGA president, Reagan has led several initiatives, including launching a student-led podcast aimed at providing students with valuable information from Tennessee business and elected leaders, as well as Columbia State alumni, students, and employees. Welcome, fellow podcaster Reagan.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And Tia Miller. She serves as the Student Development Coordinator at Columbia State Community College and has been there for the past 6 years. In her role, she focuses on developing and implementing campus-wide programming across all 5 of the college's campuses with a 9-county service area. She serves as the advisor to student government and the President's Leadership Society program. She manages clubs, organizations, and oversees the departmental social media account. She's worked at several four-year institutions in the past, as well as, in the Boston area, as well as other institutions. She's deeply committed to enhancing the college experience, and that's fueled by her belief in the transformative power of student engagement and her desire to create a vibrant campus culture. Tia holds a master's in higher education administration from Suffolk University and both a bachelor's and associate's in fashion, merchandising, and marketing with a minor in leadership studies from Mount Ida College. She also has served in various volunteer roles with the National Association for Campus Activities Northeast. Welcome, Tia.
Hi.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit today, both of you involved on a campus level with student activities and the role that student activities play in building a sense of campus community for students and connecting with faculty and staff in the greater community outside of the campus. Again, the book focuses on this theme of engagement, a theory by Ernest Boyer. The book looks at 5 diverse institutions and their successes and failures in establishing this sense of connectiveness. And Boyer's theory, he has kind of 6 key components. One being that we're educationally purposeful, that we create open places where civility is affirmed, just places where persons are honored, disciplined places where group obligation guides behavior, a caring place where individuals are supported and services encouraged, and a celebrative place where traditions are shared. So really this sense of belonging can feel intangible, but it essentially describes how people feel when they are in a place that they feel they're meant to be and with people they're meant to be with, so it feels good, right? If students arrive on our campus and don't feel that, they disengage, they feel discomfort, they disconnect. So in your various roles, I'd like for you to kind of expand upon this reflection that you have about how you're building a sense of belonging from your respective positions. Maybe we'll start kind of higher level, as a director, and then we can kind of hear from the student experience.
Sure. So I think it's definitely important for our students to find that place outside the classroom. And that's going to look really different for every one of our students. And I think that that's something that sometimes people get a little caught up in, that everybody has to be that super involved student. They have to be the president of the SGA, that they need to be in those honor societies. And I think our students are coming to campus now with so many different identities. And even over the last few years, they've added even more identities than they did 5, 10, 15 years ago. And I think it's finding what makes them feel connected and like that they're part of that campus community. For some of them, it is that high-level leadership so that they can learn those skills that they can apply towards their jobs, their careers, whatever their future holds. But I think for some of them, it's just finding some place where somebody recognizes them as a student and that they are holding these different identities, that all the time they have to give to be involved and engaged in their community is to stop by an event and grab a snack and a drink while they rush off to, work or to take care of a family member or something like that. And I think it's really important for our students to feel seen and for us to see them as their whole person and for them to be able to feel like they're connecting to somebody, that somebody is there to answer a question for them, that there's somebody there that's going to make sure they have an allergy-friendly snack,
Sure.
And seeing them as a whole person when they're outside the classroom.
Right. More personalized. Yeah.
Tia, I think that's actually like a wonderful point that you just brought up. And it makes me think about belonging in general. I think all students on our campuses want to belong, but that means very different things to different people.
Mm-hmm.
So for some people, that means engaging in those extracurricular activities and taking part in the honor societies and stuff like that. But for other people, that just means providing a safe and welcoming campus. That can lead to somebody feeling like they belong.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think there's a great level of interpretation when it comes to what belonging actually is for students.
So, then that's going to be that can be hard sometimes to figure out how you meet people where they are with all their different perspectives or what they're looking for. So can you talk a little bit about how does student government maybe think about that?
Yeah, I think the topic of student belonging is something that I've been thinking about since the day I took this position.
Mm-hmm.
And the conclusion that I reached, at least for me, is it starts with some level of genuine empathy for other students, as cheesy as it sounds and as overused as it is. I think to have some genuine desire to help other people. And then starting there, having been elected to this position with that mindset, then, I wonder, sorry, I'm just going into a deep thought now.
Yeah, sure. No, that's good.
Unlocking the memories from earlier. But I think one of our core responsibilities is to provide a campus experience that is positive for students, a culture that students really enjoy. And I think that starts with acting as the voice for the student population, because the primary responsibility of the Student Government Association at any college is to be that conduit for students on their campuses, to make sure that their voices are heard and recognized. So I think we have to start by establishing that responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing my best to think that way, but it can be difficult. But I think when I think about what SGA is doing now, a lot of it is really just trying to engage with students in every way that we possibly can, because reaching out to them, especially across 5 campuses, can be extremely difficult.
Sure.
Most of the time they may not receive the communications that we send out to them. So I think it's been a matter of bringing awareness to the Student Government Association so that we can, in return, help students. I think it all starts with wanting to help other students, and then as a result of that, then building that environment where students can feel comfortable and welcome on campus.
Yeah, and I, as an administrator, as an advisor, so you're in a position where you have to kind of coach the students who are in these leadership positions. They're trying to grow as individuals, but they're also trying to provide opportunities for other students to grow. So can you talk a little bit about that process for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always, being in higher ed, and I've been at so many different kinds of institutions and things like that, I've always said to my students in any group that I've advised or worked with, I've said to them that they need to remember that not every program is going to be every student, but that there needs to be a program for every student. So that might mean there's only a few things throughout the year that fit that student. It might not be everything, and there'll be for some students that everything is right up their alley and they want to engage in all of that. And I think that's the part that's really important, is that they at least feel like there's something for them, and that's what SGA and any of the clubs or orgs need to think about. And for some of them, that might be because they're an academic or an honor society. That means that it's very focused on their major and it's very, practical skills that they're learning, or they're traveling to conferences and things like that. And I think it's figuring out what matters to that student and for them to be able to see themselves in something. And I think it's also us recognizing, and Reagan kind of spoke to it about, we have 5 campuses, it's 9 counties, and the needs in those counties is the case at a lot of our institutions varies greatly, and the interest and the needs. So it's making sure we accommodate those, even when it's the small things. And sometimes I get caught up in the very tiny details. And I think sometimes my students are like, ugh, but then they see it on the other side. Depending on what we send to one campus versus another campus. We just, I did a hat bar recently, and, searching for what was going to go on those, it was looking at, well, what's of interest in those areas? What makes sense? Because Columbia State serves one of the most affluent areas and also one of the poorer, most rural areas. And so what those students are looking for is very different, and what they're used to is very different. And, it's spanning are they first gen? Are they the third in their family to go to college? And that's affected too. So, what are they expecting? Are they expecting what their families told them about their experience at a 4-year? And my belief is that a community college, there are a few things that we have that are limited, or even our technical colleges. We're limited in the fact that we lose our student leaders so quickly because we have them for 2 years, and then we watch them go off and be successful at other institutions, which is fantastic. But everything else, they deserve the same experience. And that's what I'm always advocating and talking with our students about, is that whatever somebody else can do, we can do it too. There shouldn't be a limit to it just because, it's that thought that people think, well, it's community college, it's grab and go, and you're just coming and going for class, and that's all that's there. And I think our students have learned that there's more. And I think that we've had students that are surprised that there's things that they never expected to experience. And I've even had faculty and staff say, oh, well, I never thought we could do this here. And I said, well, why not? And I think it's giving the students the courage to dream and to explore whatever it is they want to pursue. And if they want to do it for themselves, there's probably another student on those campuses that has the same thought, same dream, or wants to see the same thing they do. They're never alone.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of student activities is, and to your point, we do kind of rotate through students a little bit more quickly than a 4-year institution. So you can lose momentum with some things because maybe it's being driven more by just the students at that moment in time and their interests. But that's the beauty of student activities is you can create clubs and organizations around anything that you really have an interest in, right? And so you can kind of ebb and flow with that however the students want as well.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I try to think about is what are the things that are kind of have become signature or those traditional. So thinking about what Boyer was saying about it needs to be a sense of, tradition, right? So what are the things that we should keep? And then what are the things like we're going to have this event, but what happens at that event can be changed by each group of students that comes in, and they can make it their own. And it is kind of exciting at the same time. While, it's unfortunate we only have them for a short time, it also means that it's ever changing, that there's a lot less, well, this is how we've always done it. The students are more able to say, well, let's do it this way instead, and take those risks. Yeah.
Well, and we are finding more and more that this generation coming out of high school, of course, they're a lot different than our adult learners that come back. They're wanting different things than adult learners. In many ways, adult learners are already connected to the community because they're coming from the community and have family and other things. But students coming straight out of high school kind of, especially during COVID and, they've been kind of isolated in a lot of ways. Technology's been isolating our students in more ways. And so they're actually seeking more in-person kinds of activities. Have you found that to be true?
I mean, this is entirely anecdotal, but
Yeah.
I would say it appears to be the case just from what I've seen on campus.
Yeah.
I think I definitely started at Columbia State after the pandemic had hit, that kind of time. So online classes have been really a core element of every student's
education.
experience.
Yeah, right.
Not only at Columbia State, but everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think looking especially back to these past few semesters, we've seen a very large turnout of students at the different events that we hold, the various activities that we have for students, especially this semester across all of our campuses, an influx of students at these various things that we hold, much more so than we would anticipate, than we had prepared for.
Yeah, they're kind of seeking it out then.
I think so.
Yeah.
In some capacity.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, it's going to depend on the event too, I suppose, who you're bringing out. What are some things that you're hearing from students from an SGA perspective that are concerns or things on their minds? Like, is there anything really kind of popping out, standing out to you right now?
Yes, there is. And that really excites me because it means we've found issues that kind of exist among many students. But one, for instance, is having spoken to many students and faculty members in person on our Williamson campus and in Franklin, we learned that there's a real need for an in-person counselor to offer those mental health services for students. Many students were asking for it. So the first step that we took then is to reach out to the appropriate sources at the school and then figure out, okay, where are we with this? Does SGA need to get involved in some capacity? Can we help expedite the process in any way?
Are you as an administrator kind of hearing some things as well?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of the same things across our campuses. I think one of the really big things, actually, a lot of the things that we're seeing aren't any different than what we're seeing in our communities. It's housing, it's food insecurity, it's those kinds of things. So I think that those are places that we really need to kind of continue to expand those services and look at how we're serving them and what makes sense. The traditional food pantry isn't necessarily what our students are needing. It's those grab and go and things while they're at school that they're able to have. So I think that those are some of the things and discussions that SGA has been having this semester and last semester too, this academic year. And I think it's just figuring out how it makes sense. How do we make it work? And, we're not getting more space anytime soon at most of our institutions. And, the dollars are what they are. So how do we make that work? And how do we best meet our students? And I think one of the other things that goes along with that is sometimes the services are already there. It's the raising the awareness to our students. And, I will be honest, the students have definitely made me grow. Like I've always on Instagram looking at those squares that are now rectangles. But, I was always nervous about moving into that space. And in the last few years, the students have said, we're not looking at our email, but we're looking at social media. And so it's meeting them where they are and finding out how they need to find out about things. So it's exciting because the challenges that they give for us to continue to expand in our careers and in what we're offering. So it's, letting them know what's already there and then figuring out, okay, what are we doing that needs a little tweaking, or what is it that we need to completely, start over again on.
It's this sense of well-being that's also mentioned in the book, and you both are talking about that from mental health to just basic needs that need to be met. So from your perspective, I mean, how important is it to think about community also in that sense of building well-being with our students? And what does that mean? It might not just be those basic needs. It might be other things. But can you speak to that a little bit more?
I think it's, giving our students opportunities to, see what their careers are going to be like. We have a lot of our students where they're already choosing jobs and careers where they're wanting to serve their communities. So it's how can we make them best prepared for that? So like with our clubs and organizations, them, attending conferences and being able to take advantage of those kinds of things so that they can, really give back to those communities. Our students are always wanting to do that. Our student government started several years ago, a trunk or treat, and it's one of the most popular volunteer opportunities for our students, and they love it. They love being able to come out and see the kids in our community, and for, them to have that night to be kids themselves. And we see our athletic teams coming out and doing that. We see students that have never attended events before. Sometimes that's the first time. I've had students who got involved because they came out to give back to their community, get their community service hours, but then it's turned into more for them. Because it was something that met a need they had, but then they turned around and found this whole other place to go.
And really that's also plays into the purpose behind a student government, is also instilling with the students the importance of building community partnerships and a sense of civic responsibility, right? So it's not just about the campus, but it's just you're part of a much larger national, global society. So, I mean, are you, from an SGA perspective, are you doing things that also are building a sense of civic responsibility with students through SGA?
I would like to think so.
Yeah.
But as far as specific initiatives that we've engaged in that would cover that specific topic, I do think that specifically looking at the podcast that I've been trying to get off the ground, and luckily I think now is, that was an initiative that was not asked for by students. So one that I've been kind of thinking over very carefully, how many resources am I willing to kind of put into this project that students aren't asking for?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that it's something that could provide students with some very valuable information and knowledge coming from business leaders, elected officials, various Columbia State faculty, staff, alumni about different things. And I think that could potentially broaden people's horizons and help them recognize that they are receiving advice from people who are outside of the college. So in a sense, we are in this greater community. So on a state level and perhaps on a national level as well.
Sure.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, our campuses do lots of things in terms of like voter registration and things like
Absolutely.
that. But can you speak to some other ways that you're building civic engagement?
Yeah, so we have actually our department started a partnership this past year with a local bank. And so one of those things that we've been doing is we started an Adulting 101 workshop series. And we're covering things such as, how to file taxes, how to, get insurance, first-time home buying. So we've been using those resources, using their connections in the community too, to kind of say, hey, like these are people that can, speak to you about this. And then if you need more information, here's the community, here's where you can go and get those kinds of resources. Because I find that our students, a lot of times it's what they don't know, Mm-hmm. And they don't know what questions to ask. But when you give it to them in a way that is very palatable for them, they're much more willing to then make those connections and to feel that connection to their community. Through our President's Leadership Program, one of the things we have the students do is some sort of civic responsibility or civic involvement. So it's, challenging them to go out and sit through a city council meeting so that they can see what's happening in their community. A lot of our students participate in the Tennessee Intercollegiate State Legislature, and they're going and, learning how's a bill become a law and actually participating in it instead of watching it. I think that giving students those hands-on opportunities makes it somewhere where they get it. I think we a lot of times think that 20 years ago, we weren't out Googling, how do we do this? And I think a lot of times we think our students have so many resources right in their fingertips. They've got their phones with them all the time. But sometimes I don't think they know how to go about asking those questions or how to seek those answers. Mm-hmm. And they need us to kind of say, well, wait a minute, you might need this. And here's how you go about doing these things. This is how this happens. So that they can kind of start thinking a little bit more for themselves, using those critical thinking skills and deciding, well, what is it that I'm missing? What is it? Do I need to, go down this path? Do I need to know more about this? And I think it's putting those opportunities out there for them, kind of like Reagan was saying with his podcast, is students haven't necessarily asked for it, mm-hmm. but they're asking for something. And a lot of times they're not able to figure out what that something is.
Right.
I think a lot of our institutions post-pandemic, we didn't have clubs and orgs. We weren't meeting on ground. And it's been a great opportunity for us to be able to move virtual and things like that. But students want some of that in-person stuff. And all of us saw some drop in those involvement. We've had folks move on and things like that. And mm-hmm. we've always, every college in America, when you go on that campus tour, they're going to say, whatever club or organization you want to start, you can do that at our institution. And that's very much true. But the problem is that I'm interested in chess, but I don't know if anybody else would want to be interested in chess. Mm-hmm. And so they aren't confident enough in themselves to just go and build it because they don't believe anybody will join them. So one of the things I've been doing the last year is I started kind of a pilot with one faculty member, and he had students come to him and they were saying, we want to get involved in something, but we don't know what, or we don't know how. And
sure,
we had a relationship. So he reached out to me and he said, what do we do here? And so we talked about that. And then as the semester went on, I said, okay, what about you doing a club or organization? And so we thought about it over the summer. And just before, the fall semester started, I went back to him and I said, Dr. Flagel, what do you want to do? And I kind of put him on the spot, and he said, I want to do something. I said, he goes, what kind of club or organization would students want to join? I said, whatever you're interested in. What is it that you're passionate about? And it was cycling. And so then we had the conversation, well, what does that look like? Is it that we meet and go cycling? What is it? And I said, again, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you think the students might want to do? Mm-hmm. And we left it very open. And they have taught students how to ride. They've learned how to do repairs. And it's just been this whole thing. So I think one of my big projects for the next year that I want to undertake is finding more. And I think that the students want it. They just don't know what they want. And they don't know how to kind of pull themselves up to start it.
So it's really about exposing them to opportunities or just letting them see what something's about. Like even, today we had Day on the Hill, TBR Day on the Hill. Students were able to go and meet with legislators to see committee hearings. Probably none of them have ever done that before, and they probably have a new awareness of how the state legislative process works, right? And it's just by simply attending that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love your example about faculty in this too, because we've been talking a lot about the co-curricular, but there's ways that faculty play into this building of sense of community outside the classroom. It's not just about in the classroom too. And so, Reagan, I don't know if you have had that experience where there's maybe a faculty member that stands out to you, and it might just be that you just connected well with that faculty member and that just made you feel like a sense of belonging. But can you speak to just any personal experience with that?
I actually have many of those.
Yeah.
Because I was lucky enough to have classes with some of the most amazing people ever. So every professor I've had at Columbia State has taught me something that I didn't know previously and has kind of opened something up in my mind. So I appreciate everybody that I've had the opportunity to learn under at Columbia State. And I think it's the kind of warm embrace that they gave as I was starting out, which made me feel comfortable to kind of ease into the extracurriculars on top of academics.
Okay.
But it was the foundation of the academics that I had at Columbia State with all of the wonderful professors that has really led me to where I am now.
Yeah, it made you feel comfortable and confident to do that. Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, I really appreciate the conversation today. Time just kind of dig in a little bit more about experiences that you all have had at your institution and the role of student government in building a sense of community. I just want to end a conversation with a quote from Parker Palmer, and each of the podcasts with the same quote. So those of you that are listeners have heard this before, but I always want to remind folks that, he has this great quote that says, "We have at our disposal one of the greatest vehicles for community building known to humankind, the one called education." And so today we've been able to hear your stories about not only again, how we're teaching students kind of the skills or the knowledge that they need, but also the things outside the classroom that they need to be good citizens and to have that sense of civic responsibility. So thank you for taking that seriously in your various roles. And it's certainly something that all of us can aspire to achieve at our institutions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this edition of From the VC's Bookshelf, brought to you by TBR, the College System of Tennessee, powering the state's economy and changing the lives of thousands of graduates, starting successful careers each year. To learn more about upcoming book selections or to register to attend discussions live, visit tbr.edu/bookshelf.